Good afternoon, guys. So, Clinton is going to be my moderator. If there's something that you think that's been missed or that needs to be hit on again, just give him a shout. I'm trying to watch here. Gravy's been in, and Slinham. No, I haven't got a meeting with Matt. Now, Matt's not going to be a topic of discussion today. We've got a lot of issues with homeless, but we'll go into that. We'll give a little time for people to get in here. I sent out quite a bit of notifications to let people know that this is going to happen because city leaders, they're not paying attention to the few that come in on a regular basis, and we need some help. We've got a lot of people out there that keep getting beat up by police and keep running into problems, and you can see these pictures behind me. Anthony, if you're out there, I'm putting up your pictures again because that was the most heinous act of police violence I've seen, that I've witnessed. I mean, that was a willful act that was done. I mean, you can see where they caused injury. I mean, this was a pressure point, guys. This didn't need to happen. And there were complaints made to the CPRB. Nothing was done. But what's really happened is there's been a control in place. And I'm going to take you all back to November. In November, our then mayor, Courtney Shipley, who I'm going to strongly encourage anybody to vote against. We've got plenty of other options out there for a mayor rather than having Courtney Shipley have another term. But she read a proclamation and got my attention about homeless issues. And that's what really kicked that off. Now, the other things that were going on in November was a big shakeup in the Community Police Review Board. Now, we've had we've had a police review board that's been supposedly codified in the city government, but nothing happens. And as of recently, the city police have been co-opting the board. I put together a playlist. It's called Rich Lockhart and LPD controlling the CPRB. And that's, several months worth of stuff. And the real problem is the people that keep getting put on the CPRB, they're replacing people that ask questions. What we saw in the November and December, now this is about when I got paid attention to homeless issues, and I'm trying to watch the chat here too. Hi, Reagan. I'm glad to see you tuning in. Reagan Benson from Denver, man. She's been quite an inspiration, and she's been helping me learn a lot about homeless issues and helping me learn a lot about street outreach. And Lawrence, we're going to be talking a lot about street outreach here soon. But in November and December, there was a big shakeup in the CPRB, and it was because a homeless man came into the city commission meeting complaining that he got a jaywalking ticket. Now, guys, the city of Lawrence had not issued a jaywalking ticket in more than a year. I did a request for the records and found that there were no jaywalking tickets. Now, they tried to water this down with other pedestrian in the roadway citations. This wasn't a drunk college kid that was wandering out into the street and going to get hit. Now, I personally jaywalk. Reagan, what's CPRB? I see you there. CPRB is the Citizens Police Review Board. And the problem with it is it's not been happening. We started this process in 2016 or so. And in 2020, there was a Citygate study that came back with a bunch of recommendations on how the CPRB was supposed to be managed. And nobody ever really took those seriously, and the city commission disregarded them, basically pushed them aside because they required the city to do things that the city was unwilling to do, which is relinquish control of the police and make it more of a citizen's issue. So looking back at that homeless ticket, when James came in and talked about the homeless ticket that he got, he talked about the fact that he couldn't understand why they were giving out homeless tickets, jaywalking tickets, because on Massachusetts Street, we see jaywalking all the time. And I personally make it a point to jaywalk going into the city commission meetings now. I'd love to get that ticket and go in there, and let's talk about James's ticket as well. But the CPRB, we had the Citygate study, and they came back with recommendations that seemed to strengthen the purpose of the board. And we had board members that were going to strengthen the purpose of the board. During that time, we had James Minor as a board member. And if you all remember, and you'll see in the playlist, James Minor is the one who didn't really want to hear from the public. And you could see that in the way he handled things. He just moved right past public comments a number of times. He eventually resigned. We had Tonia Salvini, who resigned. We had Sanjay Mishra, who resigned. Sanjay was a great guy. Met with him and talked to him about the issues. Now, the one thing that I'll notice about all the people that were resigning, those are the people that were asking the real questions. And see, this is what we really come down to, is the city control over who's asking the questions. Nobody asked any questions about either one of these. And I made it a point. And Minor tried to boot me out of the meeting one night for making that point. And nobody wanted to address these issues. So we have a big turnover in board members. And in December, with the resignations that happened as a result of the homeless jaywalking ticket, we had our mayor appoint a couple new members. And my phone's not ringing. I'm hoping that I can get a CPRB member or somebody in the city or somebody. There's people out there that have my personal cell phone number. If you want to ring in and chat about this and be a part of this, come on in. You know my number. And if you don't, you know how to get it. So ring my phone. It's sitting right here waiting for your call. And we'll put you on this and we'll talk about this. We can debate this stuff. But in November, December, January, with the big shakeup, and in December, the mayor appointing two new board members, I just put out a video that was mostly the January meeting, where a board member, Jordan, she'd asked the right questions. And the bad things, the questions that she asked got ignored. And Kirby, you're live on the YouTube feed.
Hi there. I might have missed the last couple seconds there. But I think you're right, especially about the idea that it seems like when you have homeless people getting like their jaywalking tickets and stuff like that, that's not a ticket for them being for them jaywalking. That's a ticket for them being homeless and the cop not liking them. And you talked about this accountability thing, and I agree with you 100% on it. I guess just for me, it's always, and we've talked about this before.
Kirby, you kind of dropped off there, bud. Say that again. You kind of dropped off there.
It's about rallying the community. It's about getting people engaged in that process and understanding the kind of the complex system that's posed against the community. For me, even, I think we've talked in depth about these kinds of issues, and I don't know if I fully understand who in what position are the people that are creating problems and who are the ones that might be trying to solve them. And part of that is, I think, just community education, along with mobilizing people towards that issue.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do today, is educate some of the people in Lawrence, because the reality is most people are involved in their day to day and don't have the time to pay attention to this and pay attention to everything that's going on. And they need somebody to be able to bring that to them. And Kirby, I'm going to bring this around to the newspapers, because I've chastised both the LJ World and the Lawrence Times repeatedly for not covering some of these issues. And not, here recently, I've told them that, look, I've put these board members and these city commissioners on their heels with things. I need your freaking help to come in here and help push them over and get this point across. What do you say about that?
I think you go around the newspapers. I think it comes down to a grassroots level of making sure, whether it's making little trifold pamphlets, whether it's making a video kind of documenting who and what did where. So one of those things. But if the Lawrence Times doesn't help you, if whatever newspaper doesn't help you, you got to go around them, and you got to tell the community in the way that you would want the newspaper to tell them.
Yep.
Hey, these are the people that are maybe corrupt, or maybe they just don't have the right incentives. Maybe they made it clear in the past they're not trustworthy.
Yep.
However it is, we need to know.
And Kirby, I'm gonna go ahead and let that be it. I will tell you that's exactly why I started putting out the video that I put out the other day, and trying to include a bunch of the past stuff that's happened and explain the story to the people. If you go back and watch the last CPRB meeting, and there was a video that I put out about it, I made a strong point to them that they have a biased member of the police on that board, and they also have a member of that board who is compromised in the fact that she's an attorney, and she's refusing to bring up the fact that this cop is biased, and he's a part of the board that's supposed to develop the policy that's going to dictate how we handle police bias. Now, how are we supposed to have people in there that are going to develop biased policy when they're already biased themselves? That makes no sense. I want to thank Kirby for calling in. He's the Democratic Socialist in the area, and he's got a lot of great points. And I think that as far as engaging grassroots, that's great, but we need you guys to come out. Grassroots is fine as long as it's us, right? As long as it's just the guy that's willing to go up there and say whatever he wants. Guys, I'm taking charges trying to hold these police accountable. Other people have taken charges trying to hold these police accountable. This fella, Anthony, up in these pictures up here, I want to tell you what happened with him. They charged him with, Anthony, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was resisting or interference or something like that. Same thing that they charge everybody with. He pro se'd his way to a dismissal. And the way that they dismissed, they didn't tell him that the case was dismissed. They drug him along until the day before the hearing, and then just said the hearing was canceled. What's a canceled hearing? He had to assume it was dismissed because there was no hearing on the docket. This is the way we get treated by the district attorneys, by the police. They make up charges and they push it through to these offices, and they just keep going. My phone's sitting here, guys. I want a police review board member. Let's get a commissioner in here. Let's get some people that are involved in the process. Anybody got the balls to call and get in the discussion? You won't discuss things in City Hall. I'm offering you a platform right here to discuss it. And I made you all aware that I was going to be doing this. How about it, Rich Lockhart? You want to call in? And yeah, Clinton, I wholeheartedly agree. The whole thing with Anthony was a bunch of bullshit, and that should have never happened. And that's why I put up those pictures there. Alex Curry, your local guy, do you think the board should have more oversight of the police department as a whole, along with oversight of the complaint process, which is the main purpose of the board? Oversight of the police department is going to really rely on the people. The board is only going to be able to do so much because they're only going to be able to dig in to so many details. That's where it relies on people like us to step up and make them aware of that. Now, can the board oversee the entire police department? If the right makeup of the board was there, and I don't want a lot of police officers on there right now because we need to get the board up and running. And this is something I said to somebody the other day. I don't have a personal problem with Brenda Cleary. I don't think she's a bad person, and I think she could probably be a good board member, but not right now. We can't have people that are compromised. And so oversight over the whole process, I think that the board needs to have oversight over the whole process right now. The whole complaint process, not over the entire department, but not just biased complaints either, because there's too many times that complaints get put in and they get exonerated, but they're outside the board's purview. Just for example, this Anthony's case right here, that's not really under the board's purview because there's really not a bias alleged, unless you want to call it a police bias against the citizens, which isn't codified anywhere. And it's just like homeless bias. If we want to look at that, it's not codified in city policy. It's not codified anywhere. So you really can't bring a complaint based on homelessness. That's the argument against it. Now, when you have the only homeless person getting the jaywalking ticket, the homeless person getting the only jaywalking ticket in more than a year, there's questionable whether there's bias there or whether that ticket should have even been issued. Let's see. Seems the board is controlled by police rather than the other way around. Shiva, you're exactly correct. And if you watch the playlist that I put up, that it's Rich Lockhart and the LPD controlling the police review board, you'll see there's been several times where he's told the board that they weren't allowed to receive information unless it went through him, that they weren't allowed to go into an executive session. This is the chief of police telling this board that they're not allowed to go into executive session. They don't need his permission to go into executive session, but he exerts that authority nonetheless. Are there any actions that you would want the community members to join you on the ground coming up? Every single meeting, guys. I mean, if you can't make it down to City Hall to do it, log into YouTube and do it from home, or log into, Zoom and do it from home. They need to hear that people out here are not satisfied with the way police are treating them. And the whole reason I got started was a BS case. And I want to go into that just a little bit. I've heard a lot of people talking about, oh, you're just here to make money and you just hate on the police and all this other crap. No. I got my ass kicked and I was the only one charged. Then I did an open record request to get a video that the prosecutor withheld, and I got charged again with the same case, and they added charges. No, they made an enemy there, and they pissed off somebody that was able to look into things and able to stand up against them. And that's where we're at right now. And so right now they just keep trying to find a way to charge me. I put out a video here the other day that had Skylar Richardson at the very end of it saying, oh yeah, when I come back to patrol in October, I'm going to be the one to arrest him if there's anybody going to arrest him. That's the way our police department thinks, and that's what needs to change. And the Community Police Review Board is the one that needs to change it. Chris Flowers, he's a candidate for City Commission. He's typing in, there is a community police oversight meeting coming up a week from tomorrow, I think. Citizens in Lawrence should attend. Chris, this is July 31st, and you're right. People should attend, but I got to tell you, I'm questioning that process as well, because Skylar Richardson has been allowed to sit on that work group, and he's been allowed to continue to sit on that work group for more than a month since I brought to light his statements that were captured by his own car cam. And when I brought that to light, I have an attorney tell me that she has a client that her client depends on his testimony. And at the same time, she's unwilling to deal with this. This review board process and the work group, it's nothing with those things happening. So whether people attend on July 31st or not, these people on these boards that are compromised and co-opted these ways, you're not going to get any kind of real result with those people on those boards. And, this didn't have to come to this. And Chris, because you and I have talked about this, that this came up a long time ago, and they could have handled this without having Brenda Clary involved. But when nobody would handle that, I walked into the last work group meeting, like the one that you're talking about. This was on July 10th, and I handed out a paper to everybody telling them what was going on and saying this needed to be corrected and that this officer needed to be off the board. And that's when I get an attorney tell me that she's compromised. And regardless of what the compromise is, I don't care how serious it is. And again, I have nothing personal against her. She just can't be on this board right now. Yes, this is not the process preferred, but it's the process we're currently in. Chris, I get that it's the process that we're currently in, and that's what I'm trying to change, is because the process that we're currently in, we've seen time and time again that the city, as I said earlier, I've got the city on their heels about this whole complaint process, and we can't get the rest of the people in that room that needs to help push them over and get something changed about this. The process that we're stuck with, if we keep taking that approach, we're never going to get anywhere. Somehow the process has got to change. When city commissioners are telling me that they're powerless to do anything about city politics, they need to step in. And if they're not willing to put themselves on the line to do it, so be it. That's not my problem. But if, Courtney Shipley, she needs to go. She sits there and ignores people when we're talking about these issues. And the chief being involved in the CPRB, he needs to assign somebody in there and get out of the way. And the other thing, we need to have Skylar Richardson off that board. Brenda Clary needs to be off that board. You know, I can't believe I can't get right here, guys. I got my phone right here waiting. How about a board member call me? Is there anybody out there that's willing to talk about these issues and go on record? City commissioner, city staff, anyone? I'm waiting. This is just like the DA's office the other day when I'm taking Brady O'Giglio information into her about her officer. Since nobody wanted to address it, I decided to go ahead and just take it into the DA. You know, this is a learning process for a citizen. When I learned about Brady Giglio, I never realized that it was only prosecutors and DAs that had that responsibility. So Brenda Clary didn't have that responsibility apparently, but it's still an ethical issue. So since she didn't have that responsibility and defense attorneys didn't, I took it straight to the DA, and the DA has to act on it. So if Brenda's depending on him crashing and burning, you know, there you go, Brenda, you're welcome. Chris says he'll call in if no one else will. Chris, call in. Shit, man. I don't want to talk about legalizing shrooms, but go ahead and call in if you want to talk about this. Have you been in touch with Mike Deaver about the CPRB? Alex, I'm hesitant to talk about who I've talked to on here. As you can understand, things are quite political in this town. I've talked to a number of people about this, though. Here's Chris. Hey, Chris, you're live, buddy. Go ahead. Whoop, let me put you on speaker. That's my bad. Now you're on speaker. Go ahead now.
Okay, I'm just calling to verify that what you're saying, what's going on, that the current process that we're in is not what I would have wanted. We should have, I think, I forget how long ago, I think it was a year ago when didn't the CPRB present their own plan? And that's when the commission voted that down instead of, and chose this process that we're currently in.
The CPRB submitted an ordinance. They had worked up their own ordinance, if you remember, and they submitted it, and the city turned it down. And if you remember when the Citygate study was happening, that's what's basically happened repeatedly is the city keeps being given recommendations on how to correct the process that they have, but they refuse to listen to them. And that's why we're in this work group again, isn't it?
Yeah. And I just want to say that I was at the past the community, the oversight one where they invited everyone, and everyone seemed to be like everyone at my table when they put what they wanted, that we want a process where for complaints that if someone puts in a complaint that it's reviewed by an outside party and completely independent of the police, where the police are involved in the review process.
Now, do you think that needs to be the standard for all complaints, or is the CPRB
for all complaints? And I want to say about how they have such a narrow scope that I'm against that. We do need to change that, where it has to be like a bias. I don't think it should have to be a bias, because I mean, let's say you get hit, like the police strikes you in the head, like why does it? It's not okay if no bias was involved, you know.
No, I agree.
It's still not okay. So we need to be able to review cases of police being inappropriate and, you know, being bad at their jobs.
Now, there's going to be police out there that are going to say that they don't want citizens a review process that's outside their control happening as the initial step. How would you feel about it giving the police the opportunity to review? And just like it is right now, if the police don't come with the decision on the case that's expected by the complainant, that complainant could appeal to this board to review.
Yeah, I mean, if that's a compromise, I guess. I mean, as long as if the police say nothing was wrong, but the the complainant is still unsatisfied, that it goes to a third party. It's like, just as long as the police don't have the final say, someone else definitely needs the final say.
And Alex
But,
Kerr, Alex Kerr agrees with you. He's in the chat saying that he agrees with that.
Okay. But I mean, I'm not sure how needed it is for police. If police want to review their own case, but then someone else can review it if they feel like it wasn't reviewed fairly. I don't know why the police would still want to do it first anyway. Like if the end process still allows the citizens justice, you know.
Well, ideally, we'd put a system in place where the police know that they're going to be reviewed, and they would begin to take these cases seriously and give them the adjudication that they should.
Yeah, and then review it correctly the first time.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know if I would still think. I'm still think they're gonna try something though. You know, like try to justify it.
Now, if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd say the police just came and knocked that down.
Yeah, and see, and the problem with that current board, I don't think it's just Skylar Richardson. It's the number of police we have. I think is it 4?
Yeah, what we have is
they get. I want to say about a third of the board, and to have they shouldn't be having voting power is what I.
Yep.
I mean, I'm okay if they want to be part of the process and like argue their case, but they shouldn't be having a vote. I don't think, and especially not 4 out of 12, like a third.
Right, and let me explain that to people. What we have is the review board work group is supposed to be working up this ordinance for the city commission to review. There are 5 community members, which are just random citizens that were selected by the commission. I believe we had to be careful, right, Chris? They were selected by the commission, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there's that commission discretion.
I just want to say, but some of them I do trust. Like I think so. So I'm not against.
But you know, somebody like you or me didn't get that call.
No.
Right.
No. I want to say I recommend it.
Well, so anyway, we have the 5 community members, and then we have 3 members of the community police review board, which these are 3 people that have been appointed to the actual board who's supposed to do these reviews. And the work group is reviewing the ordinance and trying to come up with an ordinance that board is going to work under. In addition to those 5 citizens and the 3 review board members, we have 4 police officers, and those are 2 from command and then 2 from the Lawrence Police Officers Union.
Yeah, and that's where the problem is, because when they have 4, then they just need 2 to create a tie, and then I'm not sure what happens in a tie situation, but I'm guessing it goes to the city. Like somehow they're gonna make it city staff.
I don't think there's a tie situation coming out of this. What it is they're able to water down the process so that when the commission actually reviews the final ordinance that's going to come into play, it's already watered down.
Yeah.
Right. Because the police don't want to be reviewed, and we've learned that time.
But that's my question is, well, what will the final recommendations be? Like, will they have to have a majority for a recommendation to be made to the commission?
You know, that's going to depend on how the work group does their work, obviously. You know, and is one vote the same as another is my question, because if we have people that are co-opted and people that are compromised, are they just voting the way they're voting because that's the way they've been instructed to vote?
Yeah, especially if an attorney with that needs the police for their case. I mean, I can see how that can be compromised, because the police, if they only need 2 to create like a division, that there's one right there, you know.
Right.
Like I won't testify if you do such and such.
But you know, at the same time, I see the need for attorneys to be on the board, and at least one attorney to at least make sure that they have somebody there who's on the board that can clarify the legal aspects. And we did. And I don't have a problem with having a civil attorney, somebody who's not going to directly intersect with this kind of work. You know, but right now with a local defense attorney who, from what I understand, Brenda takes clients from the court-appointed list as well. So there's just about any case that she could be involved in here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you calling in, man, and good luck
Okay,
in the election
thank
at
you.
the end of the month,
I
man.
hope you get a commissioner to call in.
Well, I'd like to hear one. We've got a candidate now. If there's any other of the candidates that would like to call in, that would be awesome. Call in and let's talk about this. But what Chris has been in the room with us. He's been in all these meetings, and Alex has been attending most of these meetings as well. There's another fellow named Stephen Watts who's been there quite a bit. He knows a lot about the policy decisions that are being made. And see, that's the thing. When you get down in the weeds in this, it's hard for you guys to understand what we're saying. And that's the gap that we need to figure out a way to bridge. If we could teach you guys how to understand what's happening, that's really the big point, because we're not trying to tell you what to think. We're trying to get you to understand the process. And let's see, we got Tony Edwards. Greetings. Are you able to review and recommend training material? Is there any legal method to interrogate police unions? But you know, honest to God, the best training material I've ever seen is James Freeman's channel. You want training material? Go watch James Freeman for a while. He'll show you how to do this. Bart won't call because you're not saying anything of substance. Well, at least he can't kick me out of this meeting, right? I've been watching your channel for some time. I'm from Ohio. Don't know if it helped much, but I wanted to let you know you have. Well, we appreciate the support from Ohio. Is there any other board member that wants to call in and talk here? Any other CPRB member? Any other city commissioner candidate? Stumbling Bear could call in. You know, the work group members, any of the civilians from the work group members like to chime in on this. There's a couple work group members I know have my telephone number. Reach out. You know, I'm not going away right quick on this. We're going to stay here for a little while. But this process, if you go back and you watch the playlist that I've set up, it's Chief Lockhart and the police assume control of the police, of the CPRB. You're going to see the number of times that Lockhart has shut down the desires of the police review board and given those members no option but to resign. There's no point for them to stay if they're not being effective. And that's what they meant. That's what I meant the other day by breaking their board. And that's been acknowledged by other people, that I broke their process, because the police have been exposed as the control mechanism of this process that they truly are. And people aren't buying it anymore. I mean, the narrative has been flipped over. Give me a question or two, guys. Is there any civilians out there from Lawrence? If cops can arrest me, can my neighbor review my case instead of having it go through the court system? That's not what we're talking about, Don. What we're talking about, if you get arrested, that case is going to go through the court system. But what we're talking about is if you're getting arrested and the cop bashes your head into concrete for no reason and you make a complaint, then yeah, we're going to want your neighbor to know about that. Wouldn't you? I mean, how about your neighbor gets bashed into the concrete next time? That's what happens when nobody steps up. Yeah, I know, man. I'm just joking. My question was unclear. As a citizen, are you able to influence the police training material? Tony, you hit on it. I put up some videos about police training material, and they are trained extremely aggressively. There was a video that I put up that showed a wooden gun, and a girl was twirling it in her fingers. And the trainer was teaching these people to treat that as a gun pointed at them, as though they are supposed to shoot her. We also had a police chief who came into the police department, the city commission, and talked about the less than lethal techniques, the beanbag shotguns. You'll see that in the same playlist that I've been talking about, that we had a man who was shot 17 times by police rather than that beanbag shotgun being used. They knew the situation was developing and they could have deployed that beanbag shotgun, and they didn't. Police should have no control over the board, regardless of investigating oversight. It should be the control of the community. Oversight should be control of the community. The initial investigation, I agree, needs to stay under the police purview. But once that investigation is complete, the citizens need to have their input. And especially if the complaint was made and the police say nothing happened that was wrong. There was one of these videos that you'll see where I had talked about complaints that had reached the level of being federal crimes, and they're exonerated because they're not in the policy. Now, how can you have a police policy that doesn't include federal crimes? I thought that was in the very first part where they agreed to uphold all the laws of the country and the state and all that crap, right? Does it have to really be delineated in policy that you don't treat people different because of their race? Does it have to be delineated in policy that you don't threaten a crime just to gain somebody's compliance? I mean, the reality of the Levi Florshoot situation, he admitted he did not want me following him. And he threatened the crime or threatened the arrest or the ticket to get me to stop following. That is part and parcel of the civil rights violation, and we can't get them to understand this. Let's take a look here. Tony, that was a good question, man. And as far as influencing police training material, that's dictated by the state level. At CPOST right now, they're the ones that approve state level training material. I've pulled training records. I haven't gotten real deep into how they approve that training material. I've taken a look at several CPOST videos. There's so much to dig into here. And that's the wonderful killology training. Clinton, you nailed it. That killology training. And this is behind the whole aspect of officer safety. We are seriously a risk to every officer, no matter who we are. And there's a video that I put out early in 2021, and it was Officer Twite. I walked up to a scene, filmed, and he had to circle around 3 times to get my tag off my car because he didn't know who I was and thought I might be a threat because people out there were trying to kill police. When they view us all as threats, that's how we get treated. This is not a war zone. This is not American Sniper in Iraq where Chris Kyle's sitting on a building trying to decide whether somebody lives or dies. This is Lawrence, Kansas, man. It's Lawrence freaking Kansas. How about it? Commissioner, CPRB member, citizen on the board? Can the city not have supplemental training like in the state of Kansas training versus city of Lawrence training? You know, the difficulty is when the city of Lawrence tries to do something on their own, too many times there's a state law or something they're afraid of violating. And you see that with the SB 180 situation right now, is that the state has enacted laws, taking a stance on trans, and that if the city enacts laws that are in opposition of the state, they can be held liable. I understand. That's the way I understand it, is that they can be sued by the state. And cops are an occupying force. Yeah, they're occupying your neighborhoods. I've shown many times where they've just gone off on people for no reason. I've shown several instances like this, people getting thrown off their porches and people getting, kneeled on an injured back in the middle of Mass Street. Their number one job is to get home safe each night. That's the problem. Their number one job is to make sure we get home safe every night. That's their number one job, but they don't get that. When they take an oath, their oath is to the citizens and to the town and to the place that they're patrolling, not to their family, not to their brother in blue, and not to get home. I don't want them not getting home either. That, I want every officer to be safe. But if they're going to sacrifice our rights for a non-existent officer safety issue, I have a problem with that. There's so many times where I've seen that there's not been any kind of safety issues that the officers could even possibly articulate in a court. But they're going to go ahead and do what they're going to do, knowing that even if it does get to court, they got a crappy defense lawyer that doesn't have the time to go through all the evidence and review it. They got a crappy DA that all she's cared about is getting her numbers and getting her numbers in the court. They got a judge that's only hearing what they present. I'm not bagging on the judges, but they're only hearing what the attorneys present. And if the defense attorney isn't doing a good enough job to present the evidence to counteract the BS narrative that the police and the DA have come up with, that's how you end up with pleas. That's how you end up with diversions. That's how you end up with people going to jail for stuff they didn't do. Should local graffiti artists up their ACAB art quota? I'm not a fan of graffiti on people's buildings and stuff. I'm not a fan of it, but you damn sure ought to be out in City Hall, out in front of City Hall on the sidewalk at every city commission meeting. If you don't want to come in and talk, make some signs and come and stand out in front of the meeting. That way, at least they know people are paying attention. And it's just like I've told the homeless people. If you want to get their attention, make some signs and quit hanging out at that camp and come down and stand out in front of city commission during city commission nights. That'll get their attention. And that's how they're going to see you and recognize you. They took the job to protect and serve. Yeah, Clinton, they did. But you know what? We've seen Supreme Court decision after Supreme Court decision that says they don't have to protect us. Scott Peterson got off with the Parkland thing. Was that Parkland? Yeah, I think it was Parkland. And then you see where they tried to shut down that dad in Uvalde here recently. And the civil rights lawyer filed a case on him, on his behalf. The government will do anything to shut down a narrative that isn't the way that they want it. Being safe is important, but not as important as the safety. Yes, you're right, Clint. You're right. I only keyed on the first part of the narrative there, the first part of your comment. They have no duty to protect and legal ability to lie. That's right. Police can lie to you. And there's nothing saying they have to tell you that they're lying to you or even tell you the truth. As an English person now living in Ireland, this is the problem here. You're not alone. Government's corrupt. And the rare few that get in there to call the issues out get disposed of. Look at what happened with our former Homeless Initiatives Division Director. She called out the BS and the spin, and she left her job. Now, how many people have you known that's left government employment, sacrificed the paycheck, and still kept doing the work? That's how committed she is to these people, and that's how committed she is to seeing the right thing done. I don't get a government paycheck. I'm out here doing the work. There's people out here like this. And for all you people out there that think this is about money, right there, I don't need your money. And I'll be honest with you, this YouTube income, in about a year and a half that I've been monetized, and I did it for a year and a half before that, before somebody had convinced me you ought to monetize it. You've got expenses. Okay, fine. So I monetize it. I made about $1,800 in a year and a half, guys. Average that out. Okay. It's not a huge impact. So don't make this about money. And you see that I don't solicit all kinds of money. And the only time I did was to keep people warm through the winter when the city was dropping the ball. Is it possible to look up Brady listed officers in your town? That would be interesting. The Brady list is public. And there is I don't have the website. Clinton, if you can drop that website for the Brady list into the chat, that would be awesome. It is public. And when officers are added to that list, they're added to the public list as well. Now, me turning in the information to Valdez the other day doesn't necessarily mean Richardson's going to get listed. I'm making the allegation. They have to determine that he needs to be listed on that. I think he does. And I think a lot of you think he should as well, because a Brady violation doesn't just include actual lying. And I made a mistake saying that in the video. It wasn't about the fact that he lies. It's about the fact that he has a perceived bias, and a perceived bias can put you on the Brady list as well, because the Brady Giglio list is all about people in court that have a motivation to testify not untruthfully. And so if somebody has a proven reason why they might be untruthful in court, then that person would be added to the Brady list. That's how that works. No police on the board. It should fully be the community. Limit the police, at least. Maybe if we had a police liaison that was just communicating with the board about how police policy intersects with the rules that they're trying to create, that might be helpful. But having police officers in there to design the rules for how this oversight would work, yeah, I disagree with that. Didn't know about the bias in Brady. Yeah, a perceived bias can put somebody on the Brady list, because the Brady list is about whether or not they are co-opted to testify untruthfully. That's what it's about. I remember the one female cop who mistook our, yes, that was Brindley Blood was her name. and that was at 6th and Vermont. Yeah, mistook the gun as a taser, or mistook the taser for mistook the gun. She pulled her gun and shot somebody instead of tasing him. That's what happened. Have you had any feedbacks from your council meeting comments? Tony, not from very many people. Most, and definitely not from people that are on the committee, on the commission. I get very little feedback from town people because I'll be honest with you, they're waiting for the lawsuit. They think that my whole goal was to file a lawsuit with the city. That's never been my goal. My goal has been accountability. They have created a situation where a lawsuit is the only way to get it, it seems. If they want to start doing the right things, then a lawsuit would never become. But if they're never going to do the right things, then you damn right. The first chance I get to file a lawsuit, I'm going to file one. And that's what they're afraid of. That's why they won't talk to me, because they know that I record everything. They know that I'm not going to play bullshit with them. Now, if somebody wants to come to me and level with me and have a frank and open conversation, I can not record that conversation, and I'm fine with that. But I want progress. Don't come to me and try to play games with me, because I will record your ass next time, and I'll catch you, and I'll come for you. But if you want to have a real conversation about some of the problems that we're having in this city, come. And Clinton texted me. He's looking for the Brady list. I don't remember the name of it, Clint. It's a national Brady list, if I remember right. I think I've been to the website before. Mike, you're doing a great job trying to keep the community and truly understand exactly what is going on rather than what should be happening. The community needs to listen. The community does need to take an interest, because if they were to look at the actual videos from the Community Police Review Board, they're going to see that none of the videos that I have put up have taken anything out of context. It's all been what's happened. And that's why there's been a subscriber base tune into it to see it and to see me make a highlight out of it. Police have the authority to ID that person, but that authority comes with restrictions and conditions that they abuse and twist.